Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's Way T Lightheart in the BiOptimizers Awesome Health show. And I'm so excited today because I'm here with my good friend, Kelly Gonzalez, who is an amazing person. She has achieved so much at a very young age in the world of health and fitness and body movement. She's been a star on, online videos and video presentations and exercise. She's been a competitor at a Miss Olympia in the bikini category. She's got a master's in exercise science. She's written in, a gazillion magazines. She's an incredible person. And not only that, she can do some things with her body that will absolutely blow your mind. So Kelly, welcome to the show today. So excited to have you on here to share your perspective on, healing, on health, on high performance, and all the things you learned. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Wade.
Yeah, so we get the opportunity to hang out lots of times when I'm in California, and every time that we spend time together, I'm blown away because you've learned another incredible physical discipline, you've trained with some other master, or you've been on a new show or something. What's going on in your life? What's jazzing you up right now in your life?
Oh, man. Right now, I've been kicking off 2017. I ended 2016 and started 2017 at a Vipassana meditation, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. We were in Joshua Tree. There's no journaling, there's no cell phones, there's no computer, complete silence, no gestures or eye contact with other people, and you are just totally going inward into meditation and diving very deeply into that realm. And so that's how this year has been going for me so far. It's been a lot about meditation, my Ashtanga yoga practice being a very grounding practice for me, understanding the inner landscape of the body, because there's such an amazing somatic connection. When we dive into the body, twists and turns and strength, it teaches us so much about our mind, our past lives, maybe, and just our psyche in general. So that has been the somatic experience of mind and body has been what 2017 is really about for me.
That's amazing. We're going to come back to that because it's a passionate topic for both of us. Let's, for people who don't know Kelly and haven't heard about you yet, or have heard a little bit about you but don't know the whole story. How did you get started in this whole, becoming a superstar fitness, I don't know what you call yourself, a maven or expert or whatever? How did that get started for you? What's the backstory to kind of get where you are right now?
Well, I don't know about superstar. I mean, maybe like Renaissance woman. I do a little bit of everything.
Sure.
So, man, how I got started, it's funny. I grew up on 18 acres in the woods, and there were no other kids around to play with. And so my parents both worked, and I was often home alone, and I didn't know what to do. But I've always had a ton of energy and a really wild, fun, engaging imagination. So I would make up games, and they were often physical games. So, it would be walking through the woods, take care of horses, mucking stalls, climbing up into the hayloft. That was a real start for me. Be with animals and in nature, but then also finding my mom's Buns of Steel videos when I was a kid. And I was like, well, it's either do Buns of Steel and Tai Bo, or it's to watch Wayne's World for the 50th time when I already knew all the words to the movie. So I was like, I guess I'll do Buns of Steel. And I learned, it was funny, Wade, what happened was, what really got me on this path is I was in 4th grade, and from taking care of the horses and carrying, I was always really into efficiency. It's like, well, I'm not just going to carry one bucket. I'm going to carry both of them in. I don't want to make multiple trips. So I'm just going to be able to pick up these 50-pound bags of grain and, get this done. This was a job at hand that I love to do. What happened was when I was in school, we had a push-up contest. And out of all the kids, I did the most push-ups out of anybody. I did 40 push-ups. And all the boys made fun of me. They were like, oh, Kelly's stronger like a boy. And, they teased me. I felt a lot of shame around it. And I had this wonderful gym teacher. She came up to me and she looked me in the eyes and she said, "Don't ever feel ashamed for being strong." And, in that moment, I found this like power in my strength and in my physical body, and be able to do things that my peers weren't necessarily doing. And it just set me off on a path.
How old were you at that time?
How old are you in fourth grade? So I guess like maybe, are you 12? About 12?
9, 10, I guess around 10, I
Oh,
guess.
yeah, 10. Okay. 10. Yeah.
Start at 6, 10, around 10.
Yeah, about that age. But that was actually the age that my parents had bought me. They're like, "We got you a horse." And guess what? It's not broken. It's a 2-year-old horse. So I was training this like wild horse at that time, where I had to be strong, taking, getting thrown, and didn't matter how much he like took off with me or whatever. It really tested my ability to handle fear.
So you're doing buns of steel and breaking horses and beating all the boys in a push-up contest at age 10. So that's the start of things. And then where did things go from there?
Well, from the horses, my horse got sick, and so I was like, well, what do I do with all this energy that I have? I was used to going home every day after school, and for like 2 hours, I was doing labor. I was mucking stalls, and I was in my imagination, and I loved it. So I was like, here's this space, this time, this energy. What do I do? I got involved with lacrosse. And once again, no other kids in my neighborhood. So I go out and I play with my Labrador retriever. So I brought out multiple balls, and every single day, I was just playing ball every single day and shooting on the net and running sprints in my backyard. By the time I got to tryouts, I was like, I always thought all the other kids were like playing together. I'm like, oh, probably in neighborhoods, like scrimmaging. So I need to really work hard. And then I realized that I would just be able to do really well at tryouts and in practice because I had trained so hard. So then I went on this lacrosse journey, and that led me into healthy eating, because I was like, well, if I'm going to do this performance, this sport, I need to know how to eat for it. And my parents really raised me to be self-reliant. I was making my own lunches. I was doing research on like how to eat. When I got into high school, I started working at a gym when I was 16 as my first job. And I was working behind, the front desk. And I was taking all the classes. I used to take this like 2-hour-long boxing class every Friday. And I would do all the machines in the gym. And I would ask the trainers, I'm like, what else can I do? I've done everything in here. And they're like, you should probably go home. And so I would read all the magazines that were on the stands. And I really liked the men's magazines, like Men's Health and Fitness and Muscle and Fitness, because they were more scientific. So I would actually train with the men's magazines. And then in high school, when it got time for preparing for the lacrosse season, I would work out with the boys. So I would do the sprint workouts because they worked out more. We didn't have like a formal girls workout session. So I was like, I guess I'll just train with the boys and run sprints on the blacktop with them, lift weights with them. And they didn't tease me by the time I got to high school.
Like, who is this person? Just for people who don't know, can you explain a little bit about lacrosse? I mean, its origins is in the natives of North America. It's an extremely violent sport. I think the original term was called bag it away or something like that. And they would meet with tribes as a way not to have war, but they would really fight this out, and some of these things could be days. Can you want to talk a little bit about lacrosse? Because it's a violent sport.
It is. I mean, I would say the men's is a little bit more violent than the women's because they can actually like hit each other with those sticks. But yeah, the Native Americans would actually make their sticks out of wood and leather string, and they would play with this like little leather ball they would make, and they would just try to get into these nets, these goals at the end of the side of the field. And just really beat the crap out of each other with it. Women's lacrosse, was interesting. We didn't wear goggles until I got into middle school. So like it really was kind of dangerous. That little ball moves. It's like soccer, but with a ball moving quickly through the air. Catching and releasing.
And you're swinging sticks to catch these things.
Yeah, and you're catching here and you're tossing. I mean, it's a lot of eye-hand coordination, a lot of running, as much running as you would get in soccer. So, you know, I grew up doing that. You know, played all through travel teams, all through high school. Went on, I played Division I at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore.
So how did that happen? How did you go, like you were in high school and then you ended up going to NCAA. What was that like?
You know, that was my first experience of realizing that I could put something out into the universe, something that I really wanted, and it could come back to me. And that was the first time that I felt this power that I could create things in my life, because I was really into quotes and just visualization as a kid. I used to tape goals up on my bathroom mirror all the time, you know, and they used to be like, I want to run a 5:45 mile, or, you know, make it on this team. I would show up at like these tryouts for traveling teams throughout high school with a whole list, a whole printout of inspirational quotes, you know, from just people. I would feel it in my body. I would like cry over the feeling of what it would be like to make something like this happen. And I remember playing against my chimney, you know, every day. And I had this whole plan for my life that I was going to go to Johns Hopkins. Because I was like, if I'm going to play lacrosse, I'm going to play Division I lacrosse. I'm going to play top 10. And Hopkins was like the place to go. I mean, that was like the mecca for it. And so what I did was I found the process. I'm like, well, what do I have to do to make this happen? I started writing letters to the coaches. I was Googling and researching. I found out that, you know, I'm like, well, I have to let the coaches know where I'm going to be. So I would write them letters saying, I'm going to be at this tournament here or there, you know, if you want to come check out scouting. And sure enough, on July 1st, which is my birthday, it's the first day before you go into your junior year that colleges can contact you legally. And Hopkins was my first call. And I remember at that time we had like those old cell phones, you know, like I couldn't go too far away from the main mount for it, you know. It wasn't
right.
It was like the portable house phone, and I brought it out.
Ones with the big antennas. Yeah.
Yeah, the big like when you dial each number. So I put that outside. I remember, you know, while I'm playing wall ball, and they called me, and I'm like, and they invited me out for a what's it called? The official visit, when you get to go, when you get to stay with one of the college girls. And I committed. I was invited there, Cornell and Virginia Tech. And those were the main schools I was looking at. But I already knew in my heart, I committed right then and there to Hopkins. And it was nice. I coasted through the rest of high school, like knowing that's where I was going, what I was doing, staying local, plans to be a doctor. That didn't happen, but you know, they actually say that the word in Latin, doctor, is actually to teach. So in essence, I think that you and I, you know, we are, in our own sense, we are doctors, we are teachers, you know, just not in the traditional sense. So that experience was amazing.
You touched on that, something that I think is really important, in that is you had this experience of what you wanted to do. You know, you kind of visualized it, you wrote about it, you put a lot of emotion into it. But I think what separates, one of the things that I've noticed about you and other high achievers, is you just didn't sit there on your duff expecting it to happen. You had the visualized stuff, but you're writing coaches, you're running in the backyard. You have every reason not to be successful. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't have you're not in the right space. You don't have a team to practice with.
I was little.
You have you're not a large person. So you have what a lot of people would say would be, you know, formal strikes against you, right? Yet you don't see any of those. You visualize on what you want, and then you do whatever it takes within. So there's a lot of work involved with your visualization. Did you always have that, or is that something you got from, you know, mucking horses in the yard? Like, where did you fuse those? Because I know you've used this in other areas, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
You know, I've been doing a lot of shadow work on this, actually. I realized what happened to me when I was a kid is I had all this energy, and I would talk really fast and want to explain all this stuff that was coming through me to my parents or whoever would listen, but nobody could understand me. I had a really, really bad speech impediment, which is very funny that I now do speaking in seminars. I had a really bad speech impediment, and the doctor went in there and he told my mom that I need to be held back in kindergarten. But prior to that, I had the speech impediment. So they sent me to a special school when I was 3. I didn't go to normal preschool. So I went to a school where, this is kind of hard to talk about, the other kids were handicapped. So, I can vividly remember children being in wheelchairs and having cerebral palsy, and they couldn't play with me. And so I had this like inner world. I would have to play by myself. I remember I would like play with all tick-tock, the mice went up the clock. I would do all these things by myself because my peers during that age, when you're about 3 to 5, that's like you're imprinting for like how to interact with other people too and sharing.
Right.
And it was really hard because my peers they couldn't interact with me. And so I really had to form this like inner world of my own imagination and find a sense of peace within that and comfort, and learn how to comfort myself. And I learned that experience has helped me utilize and access my imagination. My imagination is as vivid as it ever was when I was a kid. I don't feel like I've ever lost that. And I think that is what really separates, as Einstein says, it's the imagination that is like your connection, the source. So that has given me this power to be solo and very self-reliant and work, even though there's not somebody there like pushing me or there's not a team. And have this connection. And even when I was a kid, like not being in a neighborhood, being in nature, I kind of found nature as a connection and this inspiration. And it kind of sprung from within, and I learned how to access that. And that's what has carried me through to like ideas of like, oh, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do that. It was like meditating before I knew what meditating was and what it could do. And so my whole life, like I've always known that it's nothing that I'm doing. It's something that's coming through me. I've always had this connection to this higher power that it's just expressing, like playing its music through me for however long it needs to. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it gives a little indication. I know myself, I spent a lot of time as a youth, isolated in the wilderness, and there is a special space that you get to learn how to be in silence and how to be, and in that silence you can discover other aspects of consciousness or things that might not be as available or very uncomfortable for people who haven't experienced that. So we do share that. So going back to the story, and we'll get into some of the other things. So now you've gone to Johns Hopkins, you've got accepted in their program. You're going to be a doctor. What was that? What was college all about for you?
Well, one more thing about the prior experience. So I was held back in kindergarten.
Right.
So I was held back and I had to repeat that. I remember in that moment that like pushed me. I felt like I'm just as capable as everybody else. So it gave me this like competition too.
Right.
And so I would like read all the books, and I would always like win the contest for like, how many books did you read over summer, this or that. I think it was like this like I needed this validation to like prove that like I didn't need to be held back. So I think that combined with the nature aspect create this like achieving mode.
Right.
But college was an interesting time because I've always been deep into self-reflection. And what happened in college is I got to a point my junior year where I realized I was like, I'm going to get out of here, and lacrosse is not going to be my life anymore. It's been my life for, the time I was like 12 years old up until this point. But this is all going to end, and I need to start doing something about what's coming next, like the next chapter. I feel like I've always been pretty good about planning and having like foresight into what's coming next and being like, okay, I need to start getting ready for this. It's like, it's like almost like okay, I need to start saving for retirement, even though it's not now. It's like these sort of things are coming, and it's better to be prepared. So I started writing the health and fitness column there because I found that I didn't want to be a doctor, because what I saw when I got there was that you're working with sick people all the time. And I was like, what if people didn't have to go through this pain? What if they didn't have to be sick? What if I could do health promotion and prevention and help them not get to that point? And all we need to do is shift the mindset to a place where it's not about like, oh, this hurts. It's like, things don't have to hurt. Let's do things before they hurt. And let's enjoy doing the things that we do to take care of ourselves because we love ourselves. So that was the transition I hit in college. And I broke off from the team aspect at that point, and I started doing, distance running. During the summer, I was an ocean lifeguard. So when I became an ocean lifeguard, this is kind of a funny story. I didn't know how to swim. I didn't know how to swim at all. But I knew I was a
How old? So when did you not know how to swim?
I was a terrible swimmer. I mean, I kind of like knew how to swim. I was 19 when I first started lifeguarding. And what happened was all my friends and I, we got a house down in Ocean City, Maryland. And they all were like, we'll get jobs as waitresses. I'm a terrible waitress. I still am. I was horrible. So my friend who was an ocean lifeguard was like, oh, you're athletic. You should try out for this. I took the test, in May, the Memorial Day weekend, and the water was freezing. I was dead last. I was dead last in the swim. And I just kind of made up this excuse being like, oh, the water was so cold. I don't know what happened.
So you went right to the lifeguard test right off the bat. You'd never, no background, hardly swam. You just went right for the test. Bang.
I did really well in the running, and they hired all of us. And so what I would do is I had like a month to get ready for this. So I would sneak into all the hotels in the area, and I would practice swimming in their pools.
Right.
But I got really good, I had to. There was no other choice. So I was wearing contacts at the time, before LASIK, and I was always scared with my head under, and the captain would take me off the stand, and we would do like private sessions on duck diving and getting through the water with the buoy. And, that summer I ended up making a lot of saves, including somebody who broke their neck. They're okay. You're not paralyzed, but,
Wow.
Opted out. So that's what I was doing during summer months. So I was on a team there.
So just this is an amazing story. You went from barely able to swim, and what time frame was it? And you're saving people from dying in the water?
A month.
A month. Okay. So obviously you've got a formula that may not be as conscious to you about how you get into mastery of skills very quickly in a world. So I just keep going. I just wanted to comment about that for our listeners, so that when they listen to you, to kind of extract that process down. So okay, so now you've saved a bunch of people. You're a lifeguard. Keep going.
So what I realized is we used to run the soft sand, right? So I'm training every morning. We had these amazing workouts. We were running soft sand. And I've always wanted to do a marathon at this point. This is my junior year of college. I've always wanted to do a marathon. And I was like, well, I bet I could do it. So I'm just going to sign up for that. I'm going to take off fall ball for the fall, which is a fall lacrosse season. And I'm going to run the half marathon. But I'm like, well, one day I just, put on my shoes. And after running in the sand for so long, I just went out and ran on the concrete. And I ended up doing a half marathon in that training session. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just do the full marathon. So what happened with that, my junior year of college, is I went down to, I didn't know how to train for a marathon, but I would just run for like time. I would just go out and I would run to the mall and back. And I would just run for 2 hours or so around Baltimore. And when it came time to sign up for the race, I was like, well, I guess I'll do a pace group. I didn't understand what a good marathon time was. So there was this pace group where they track you. And I said, well, what's a good time? They're like, well, you need to do under a 3:40 to qualify for the Boston. And I said, well, I guess I'll do that one, that pace group, and just see what happens. I ended up feeling so good during that marathon that I like run a 3:36. I left my pace group, and I ran.
So your first marathon, you run a 3:36.
Yeah. And so I qualified for Boston in the first one.
So it's just so people understand that, like, this is kind of the Boston Marathon in the world of marathons is kind of the marathon to qualify. There's just a ton of people that go to this.
Yeah.
You don't even know what the qualification time is. You show up and you run in Boston qualification times, which is a major achievement as a marathoner.
Yeah. And so I love that day too, because I got to eat whatever I wanted that day. It was so good. I was so hungry.
Right.
But I felt great. But then I was like, well, I've always known that when you have a passion to do something, you act, because that passion may not come back. And then it remains like a what if. You'll never know. So my senior year, I decided to run the Boston Marathon that year. So I actually, I do whatever it takes to meet my goals. So I actually moved out of my townhouse in Baltimore, where I was still going to school, but I organized my school schedule. So I was only up in Baltimore at school like 2 days a week. And the rest of the time I was able to train. So I moved back to Annapolis, and I lived above my aunt's garage in downtown Annapolis, so I could run with this running group that ran around the Naval Academy every day. And I would do track workouts at the Naval Academy, and it was so cold to train in February for an April marathon. I would sometimes go to the Naval Academy track, and the water bottle that I would bring would be like 5:30 in the morning, because the Naval Academy would open at you get in with your ID at 6 or at 5. And I would be running there, and my water bottle would be frozen by the time I was done my track workout. So I went through and learned all about VO2 max testing. I did the lactate threshold testing, because one thing that I always have to be careful of is I always overtrain. So I started doing all the testing to make sure that I don't
do too much.
Yeah, that I don't burn out in time for the race. So I was on track for a 3:15 at Boston. And that year we had a nor'easter storm, so it poured rain. I was so bummed. And it wasn't my best race, but I ended up running a 3:30, which was 8-minute miles, which is still okay.
Still great.
Yeah.
Still great.
Yeah. So that was the marathon experience. And yeah, it was just another one of those situations where the passion came. You do whatever it takes to get you there. You do it. And this is where we start getting into the point of now what? The fulfillment factor. So then I started having pain from marathons. I was waking up with plantar fasciitis. And I was like, what? I'm way too young to feel this old. And I knew I didn't want to just keep running marathons after marathons, because I had already done the Boston, with a good time. I was like, I don't need to keep doing this to my body. So,
how old are you at this time?
I'm 21.
20 years old. Okay, 20. Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm. So then with the lifeguarding stuff, that kind of took off, where we had these competitions for lifeguarding, right? Where you have the beach flags and the little sprints. I ended up doing really well in that. So I won regionals there. And I got invited to, we would go to our national competitions. I got invited to go to Bondi Beach my senior year of college to compete for the Team USLA, United States Lifeguarding Association. So I organized it with my school at Hopkins. I was going to finish my senior fall semester right at Thanksgiving. I was going to write all of my papers, get everything done, so I wouldn't have to come back until the spring semester. And I fundraised to make this happen. My parents have always been like, if you want to do something, find a way to make it happen. So I planned on doing a month in Australia. So I did that competition for 2 weeks, stayed over for a month, and then did okay. I didn't crush that competition. The Australians and the Japanese are really, really amazing beach sprinters. Like,
Right.
really good. And the way they train is out of this world. It's like, it is so hardcore. It's like the toughest, it was way tougher than what we did for lacrosse or anything else. It was wild. But when I was there, I got invited to come back to Australia to compete as an international competitor. So I was like, perfect, this is great. You know, at the time I was just writing for the school paper, writing a health and fitness column. I was writing for the local newspapers. So I was writing from abroad. And I went and bought a one-way ticket to Australia after I graduated college. And that's where we are in the story now.
So that's great. So you transited out of that whole world. Now, this is kind of, you're also a writer, and this is one of your great skills, and you've written in a lot of publications, and you continue to write on a daily basis. So was there a correlation between your exercise, your creativity, and your writing outlet? How did that start to happen for you to become a professional in the writing realm?
Well, you know, in college, what happened was I was sitting with my advisor and I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. And as far as I go to medical school, do all this, like, what am I going to do? I'm a personal trainer. I love training people. You know, I used to wake up at sleepovers and like lead my friends through boot camps. And I was like, you know, what can I do with this? And I also really loved this more like emotional side of me that would come out in writing. Like, I loved the fiction writing classes that we would have and the creativity aspect there. And I loved writing like little poems and haikus. And I really loved inspiration a lot. And so he was like, I have this great idea for you. You know, we don't have a health and fitness column. Go pitch it to the school paper. So I started the health and fitness column there. And all of a sudden what happened, I started having my peers come up to me and being like, wow, because of you, I'm eating this in the cafeteria instead of this, or I'm drinking light beer at parties, or I'm not drinking so much caffeine until 2 a.m. as I'm cramming in the library. You know, I would do things like, you know, drink green tea and B vitamins and just a healthier way. And what I loved about the writing is that that's how I learned. You know, it gave me a way to learn and to share and to be of service. And so I really found this creativity, this way to be of service, and, you know, something that really just brought a lot of deep fulfillment for me. And it just has kept going.
That's great. So you get done competing in Australia, running on the beach, like Baywatch competitions sort of thing, and you're writing, you come back to America, and then you kind of launch into your fitness career, that sort of thing. It wasn't not that long after, right?
When I was in Australia, what was interesting is I learned a lot about myself, a lot of self-discovery, because I had just come off this big 4-year period of like what I wanted from childhood, right? Like going to Hopkins, playing Division I lacrosse, and I was like, this is it. That was like my big success. That was like as far as I could see into the future at that point. And I got to this point where I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life now. When I was in Australia, I was having a lot of anxiety about it. I was like, do I become a nurse? Like, how do I use these skills? When I was in Australia, what I learned about myself is that I would take the bus and go and learn meditation. And I was writing about Chinese herbs, and I was doing acupuncture. And there was a lot of holistic health over there that I had never been exposed to when I was living in Maryland and in Baltimore. So it was a whole other world. I would spend most of my time in Australia at the library, and I would read these holistic health magazines. I would make copies of like these articles about how like your heart can sync up with other people's hearts, and like how your mind works, and the gut-brain connection. All these things are fascinating. So my writing really shifted from this fitness world to more of like this holistic health world. And I was like, well, I guess I'll go into some sort of healthcare when I get back. But I knew that didn't feel right. You know, I got back and I remember sitting down with my dad in the kitchen. I said, you know what, Dad, like, I'm just not like other 22-year-olds. I don't like to go out and party and drink. I was really alone in Australia. I didn't really fit in with my peers. I've always been at this other, not at all like a superior level or a lesser level, just not fitting in, just a unique level, you know?
Kind of, would you say it would be, not to put words in your mouth, but I notice a lot of high performers, you know, that who really exceed at the highest levels, there's almost a loneliness sometimes of excellence. Would you say that's true for that you found?
Yeah, my whole life there's been a loneliness. And I try to always do, get involved in things, but I find that I'm very fulfilled in my, I guess what you can say, my inner world. And maybe that's what happened when I was, really young, that I formed that. I found that solace, that space there. It's a really like a source connection though. And I feel this undeniable comfort and love there.
Would you say you're an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an extrovert when I present my material, and I'm an introvert to obtain the material.
So are you kind of like a 50-50 split? You can kind of flip between the two?
More like a 75 introvert, 25% extrovert.
Right. Okay.
Very depleted if I don't take time for myself. Yeah.
Got it. Great. So so now you've switched gears at this stage in your life, and you're emerging, and you're with your dad at the kitchen, and you're recognizing that, hey, we got to go in another direction here.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what my dad told me, though? I'll never forget this. He's like, you know what, Kelly, anybody who ever did anything great in life never followed the pack. And he's like, never be afraid to be who you are. And it doesn't matter if he's always been very, very supportive of anything I wanted to do. And so what happened was when I got back, I was like, well, I have all these articles I've written over the years. And I'm like, I should share them. And at that time, the websites were just coming up and becoming a bigger thing. So I worked all summer long. I worked as a cocktail waitress just to earn enough money to build this website. And I was able to create this website. And I remember looking at things like BiOptimizers.com, these people who are writers, and being like, oh, well, I also need to show that I live this lifestyle. So I started training. And my whole life, I've always had something to train for. So I got this coach. I said, I just need to get ready for a photo shoot so I can do some photos for the website, because I have all these articles and I just want to be able to put them up there. And I wasn't even like trying to be like an expert or anything like that. It was just more so giving what I have to the community. And that the photo shoot went great. I had so much fun training. And at that time, the NPC just opened the bikini division. And my coach was like, this would be a really great transition for you. And in my mind, I was like, awesome, because that means I don't have to stop training, because I love having a goal. And when I do really well when I have a physical goal. When I have a physical goal, I also normally have like an intellectual goal and a career goal at the same time. It's kind of like a trifecta. So I started training for those competitions, and then kind of like the other process goes, I ended up winning my first competition. And I got invited to nationals. So, I go down to Fort Lauderdale, and I'm staying at the Westin, and it was a whole new world. I was like, oh my gosh, this world's crazy. It's like we have to eat these crazy diets, and I had to go get these suits made with like, stuffed bras
and all the sequins and shiny things and the giant platforms.
And I was never a girly girl. I mean, to walk in those heels, that was crazy for me. So it was fun though. It was different. It was like this whole other side of me that was coming out. And I ended up placing second at nationals. And so then that competition was like really, that competitive spirit was ignited at that time. And I'm like, well, if I got second, I was so close. I lost by 1 point. That's 1 point. And so then, of course, I did what I do, and I start researching. I'm like, well, who are these girls who are winning? Who are the pros? And then you go deeper. Who do they work with? What do they do? And then you go right to the source of it. And so I started working with this coach in California who had trained like a lot of the top girls, including like the Miss Olympia. And then by my second show, I got my pro card. Yeah.
Second show, you get your pro card, and then
Well,
what does that mean for people? So
I got second place in my first show. I got second place twice, and then I got first place, and then I became a pro. Yeah.
And what does a pro mean for people who don't understand what did that mean for you as a pro? An IFBB pro, correct? So that's the International Federation of Bodybuilders, which is the history for people who don't know. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the Mr. Universe and Mr. Olympia, which now the Mr. Universe is kind of like the amateur level, and the Mr. Olympia is the pro level. Yeah. And you obviously did the female version of that journey to compete at the Miss Olympia as a pro, correct?
Yes. I remember reading, it was weird. Like, it was never about really becoming like a pro. I like the idea of becoming a pro in anything. I always wanted to be a professional athlete because I love to work out. I love movement or in health all so much that I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I could just be paid to do what I love to do? That's always been my mission. Whether it's health and fitness, whatever it is, an athlete, I've always wanted to be paid to do what I love to do. And that was a way, I thought. So I remember reading The Education of a Bodybuilder, and I just really resonated with Arnold's story.
Great story.
Oh, it's a great story. I mean, very similar to what we were talking about, kind of growing up and kind of in an isolated environment, but you feel this connection through your body when you're moving, you're breathing, the breath. I mean, when you're breathing hard, you feel this strength within you. It's it's like a whole other, you're in a whole different place. It's really an amazing experience. So
I find that interesting, just to interject for a second, because I got a lot out of Education of a Bodybuilder. And of course, Arnold was a big mentor for me. And you brought up something I never really realized, is that he talks about that in that book, that inner connection to exercise and physicality, and that discovering that inner power. And I discovered that myself. And here you are sharing virtually the same thing. So sorry to interject, but I just think it's really important about those early mentors and the power that one can discover from physical exercise. Yeah. Once you get past the early stages of just the pain drain, where you actually get internal on it and it becomes a meditation. So continue on.
So with the competing, it was more so following the steps of one of my role models. He made it sound, it wasn't about the glitz and the glamour for me. It wasn't about getting sponsorships or being a supplement girl or something. It was just about really fostering that connection and showing it on the outside, that inner world, creating in the external world as well. And having a dream and a vision and going after it. That's where I find my greatest happiness, is when there's something that you want to achieve and you're on this path. It doesn't matter. It's not getting there, as we've gone through this story, it's not like I've been I'm going to be an Olympic, beach sprinter forever. I'm going to do marathons forever. It's more so about each time that you do these things, you go on a little journey. And in that journey, you learn so much about yourself. When you learn so much about yourself, you learn about humanity and you learn about nature. And you get to understand yourself and you understand the universe. And if you don't take these journeys, it's you're missing these aspects of yourself. It's learning how to swim, that's courage, learning, how to lift weights and having it show on the outside, that's this strength that you can build. It was you can change your whole entire life based on what you eat, how you move, and the way you think. In a matter of 3 to 6 months, you can change everything. It's really.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second.
And now for a BiOptimizers fixed digestion tip: rapid cheat meal relief. Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest. which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout.
You just said something very profound for people, and I think a lot of people who might be listening to this will say, well, I can't be like Kelly, she's a super fitness star. But what they can take from this is something you just touched on right there, that you can do anything in 3 to 6 months.
You can do a lot.
Can you explain that process for people? Because what I've noticed in this trend and why we've kind of gone into the story is that you have a process of, you kind of discover something. There's almost like a flat period that you don't know what you're going to do. You get inspired. And then from that inspiration, you do research to find out who's producing the best result. Mm-hmm. And then you develop and take massive action, internally, and train and go and, do whatever it takes. And then you experience success, whatever that is, and success, you redefine it. You define success on your own terms, not on an external terms by the sounds of it. Yeah. And then, so just expand on that for a little bit of that process, because I think it's really powerful, because you've developed a pattern of being able to accomplish a lot in a very quick period of time.
After I went to India last year, and when I got back from India and being in this place of meditation and just accessing more of myself, this idea came to me of what this process is. And the process is igniting the fire within. So this process, it's the same process for everything. Anything you want to do is the exact same process. Step one is normally you burn out. That's that point of like you're kind of like lost in the smoke for a while. You can't see, your eyes are burning. It feels like your whole world just like burned down. That could be like, oh my gosh, I'm graduating from college. I'm not going to be this Division I lacrosse player anymore. Or I'm an IFBB bikini pro, but you know what? This isn't giving me everything I need to do for my health and my life. This isn't conducive to my lifestyle anymore. So you're in this burnout zone of like, what's next? It's like kind of like you're in between these mountains, right? And you're like in the valley at this point, and you're looking for something else to climb. And
what does that feel like?
Oh,
right. So oftentimes the biggest decision you've recognized that you've got to embrace that pain. A lot of people kind of avoiding it, but here it is. It's a crisis of some sort. It's almost like an existential crisis or a life crisis or emotional crisis. Yeah, talk about that for a little bit more for people, because there might be someone listening to this right now there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not horrible. It's the best thing ever. But when you're going through it, it feels terrible when you're going through it. But in my experience, I've been in many, many valleys. And what's so nice is that each valley you go into, you learn to create more even terrain. And you learn not to always search for these like massive summits that are going to bring fulfillment. You learn that the summit does not bring you fulfillment. So your whole idea of what success is changes. And you understand that you're going on a journey, and you choose to embark on that journey, but that journey is not you. And what comes from that journey is not you, and it does not label you, it does not define you. And there is no outcome of that journey. Whether you make it to the top, whether you become a pro, whether in yoga, if I ever get my legs behind my head or whatever, it does not matter. That's the best thing about what yoga is phenomenal for me at this moment, because it's like, for the first time in my life, I'm not trying to get somewhere. I'm just there. Just there, and I'm just in it. And whatever it is, that's what it is. And I can enjoy that, and I can love it. But there's this balance, there's this balance of we want to, create positive change in our life. We don't want to just be in this place where we're just like, this is where I am, this is as good as it's going to get. We become a little bit apathetic. So when you're in this place of like, what's next? It's a good opportunity to dive into these deeper stories that lie within you. And it's this trust. And you can be at a place, you could be at that place for 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, or 1 year, or 10 years. You know, that is, you know, you might have to sit with that. That might be, there is work to do there. It's not like you're doing nothing when you're in that zone. You're doing a lot. You are pulling and extracting. So what the next step is after this burnout is, you know, you have to create space. You have to create space in your life for something new to come. So that can mean, for me, like sometimes I need to cry. Like I need to sometimes I don't even know what I'm crying about, but I do a lot of deep spiritual work in that time. You know, like one of my worst, one of my best valleys. I did a Course in Miracles. I learned to meditate. It brings about life-changing transformation, these points in life, this like burnout place. It's really, really special. And you go forward into this new level of yourself and with a whole different way of being. And that's what it is. It's like a new way of being. So you create space for something new in your life. And then you spark awareness. You start to look around at the things that are mirroring you, that are coming back to you. Like I remember when it was my time after like the IFBB stuff, and I was like in this gym world. I remember seeing people at Muscle Beach and they're swinging on rings, they're doing natural movement, they're doing handstands. And the first yoga class I went to, I like could barely hold, you know, downward facing dog, that my shoulder is killing me. And I realized, wow, like I was always so strong looking on the outside, but inside I was not strong. My tendons, my ligaments, my core, you know, my deep stabilizing muscles, I was not strong there. And that gave me a new challenge. You get to this point where you're not in this like lull anymore. You start to get a little fired up. You get a little angry. You know, you're like, wait a second, this is not right. I need to do something about this. And then you start to take action. So then you start to ignite. You're on this new pathway. You're on this new road, this new journey. And then you start to get going. But when you're getting going, you don't want to burn out quickly. So you may have to make sure that you've gathered enough of your kindling. Your kindling is going to be the books, your resources. It's going to be your coaches, your teachers, the people around you who are going to keep you going. You know, even before that, you also need your Tinder. Your Tinder is your own personal intrinsic motivation. You know, why is it important to you? Like, who cares if you're able to do a handstand? Is that going to change your whole world? Is that going to put like millions of dollars in your bank account? Not necessarily, but why is it so important to be able to do that? Is it because, you know, in that moment, is it to feel balanced in your life? Is it to feel able to see a new perspective, be upside down and remain balanced and aligned? So it's like this different, deeper meaning. You have to have a deeply rooted meaning for anything that you're going to do, because otherwise it's just not going to stay lit. You're just going to burn out. And then you have to keep the flames going, you know? So you have to practice. You have to practice a whole lot. And you have to fan the flames. You have to give yourself appreciation. You have to do these little small wins, you know, like if, you know, today is better than what it was yesterday, that's awesome. Even if it's just by a little bit. And sometimes it might be worse, but then you keep going, you know, and you learn this willpower and you learn this tenacity that comes from within you, and other things in your life start to change. But then with that, you also have to stay really humble. Let's say things start going really good and things are like, you're just really getting up there. Doesn't make you better than anybody. You stay humble, you know, because that fire, no matter how hard you try to keep it lit, that fire at some point, it's probably going to dim down a little bit, you know, like, you remember, life is such like an arc of these mountains. Like you get up to a point that you're at this physical capacity that's like, you're just like in your peak moment. You're like, wow, I feel amazing. But then things start to decline, and we have to be able to be okay with that. You know, like that mental strength to be like, this is now, but things are constantly changing. My thoughts are constantly changing. my situations are changing, my body's constantly changing. So there's just no attachment to the fire. Yeah.
So if we've got this process, it starts with kind of a crisis burnout. The next stage is you create some space. Then you kind of spark your awareness. You start learning things. You find your kind of why. Then you ignite your passion, I guess, through books, courses, mentors, people that are producing whatever it is that you want to do. Then you gotta fan the flames, which is get into and that's about practice and working at it really, really hard, and then giving yourself. Next phase is making sure you give appreciation that, hey, today was a good day. I did my stuff, or it wasn't as good today, but I got through it, or whatever. That's where you develop tenacity. And then eventually humility to just doesn't make you better, just kind of being in that humble place. And is there anything else in the process after that? That's the cycle?
You shine bright, so this fire, this intrinsic, one thing that I teach my clients that is like the base of our program is this intrinsic motivation for a self-practice. And that is you shine bright. And when you shine bright, this fire can be felt. Like you have this self-practice, like a spiritual practice almost. Your movement practice can become like a spiritual practice. You're working with the breath, you're working with your body, you're working with your mind. You're overcoming obstacles and barriers. And you start to become this fire. When they say in the yoga tradition is that if a spiritual fire is burning within one, others cannot help but become ignited. And you begin to illuminate everywhere you go, and other people. Like, you don't have to work so hard. That's the thing. Like, you just begin to attract the energy that you're radiating. And you don't even have to give it through your words. You don't have to do anything for it. You are what you practice.
So this is a really, really great piece, I think, for a lot of people, because I think a lot of the cosmetic world, or the, worship of performance athletes or successful people or something, there's something that people are recognizing. And you talk about this intrinsic motivation that you teach clients and shining bright. What does shining bright mean becoming more magnetic? And if so, what is that? Like, how do you develop that piece? And how does it tie into this whole exercise, fitness, your process here?
Yeah. So it's turning your movement practice, your fitness practice, into more so of a meditation practice. It's as you dive deeper and you start to understand your habits and your tendencies. Are you somebody who lays in bed and you're like, I don't want to do it today, and you let that be okay? Or are you somebody like, I don't want to do it today, but I know I'm just going to do like a couple minutes, and then you do a couple minutes, and then you start feeling pretty good. And then before you know it, you're like further than you thought. And, you get to learn about your own level of motivation. You have to understand how to motivate yourself. And that takes practice. I don't think it's something that we're born with, and be like, so-and-so, is going to be motivated, and so-and-so is not going to be motivated, and things are going to be hard. It really comes down to how we train our brain and neural plasticity as well. So it's like new grooves in the brain. So the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. And the more you think positively about something, the easier and the better it's going to be for you. So I think it's when we can take control over our negative thoughts and old patterns and consistently and enthusiastically choose a new path. And that when you're on that path, you're like, doesn't matter how far you get, you're shining bright if you're taking one step, in that direction towards something that you really, from your heart, you want for yourself. And you learn so much from any journey. I mean, it could be to doing a squat, to releasing and opening up your hips, to the willpower to sit in meditation for 20 minutes. It's the practice of saying, I want to do this. I'm going to take these action steps to do this, and then actually doing it. That's the difference. Actually doing it. It's one thing. There are a lot of books out there that tell you, here's how to do it. I can say that here's a process to ignite the fire within. It means nothing. It means nothing for my clients. I could build them the very best program in the world, best diet, everything. But if they don't do it, if they don't develop a self-practice, nothing will ever happen. And that's the difference between people who succeed and people who don't.
That's really powerful work. So I know that you work with clients on this thing. How do you help cultivate that inner motivation in the people that you coach and the people that you train? What is it? Is there a process, or is it different for everyone else? So how do you find that for people, and how do people find that for themselves?
When when I first started training when I was 18, I became a certified personal trainer when I was 18. My manager, he sat me down, talk about sales. I never had to sell. I was always like one of the top trainers. It wasn't hard to get clients because I just did that thing. I practiced what I preached. So important. You got to practice what you preach. And people would just see that and they would come up to me. But he taught me a very important lesson when it came to sales that I realized later in life that didn't really have anything to do with sales so much. What he told me was, when it comes to making a sale, you get to here. So we have this spiral. And you got to get to here. And you have to hit like the root. You have to get to the emotional spot of, why is it that you want to be healthy? Oh, because I just know I need to exercise more. I'm supposed to. No, nobody says like, oh, the general surgeon warning says I need to exercise more. That's why I want to do it. It's normally for like this other cause. Like, you get to this emotional point of like, you know what? Like, I was out on the beach with my kids the other day, and I felt embarrassed to take my shirt off and get in the water and play with them. And I missed out on that experience. Or I feel like, my husband doesn't find me sexy anymore. Or there's this root cause that is an emotional pain. And what I really love about my job is working with emotional intelligence and being able to, even though I grew up like kind of doing my own thing, I love working with somebody on that level and getting to that root. And then we keep that, that's like your fit vision, right? That's what's going to keep you motivated. It's like that thing that you put in your drawer at night beside your bed. And every day you wake up and you read that, and you remember, oh, this is why I started. Because so much happens. We have 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. We have so much going on in our lives that sometimes we forget about why we started. So anytime that we don't want to do it anymore, we've just gotten so far away. We've gotten to these outer limits here when we just need to come back to the center. And one of the greatest central points is that these bodies, these are not these bodies that we can just take for granted. They have a shelf life, and if we don't explore the potential of these bodies in a multitude of ways, I feel like that is like a life unlived. If the desire, if the idea came to you, came through you, it was meant for you and it exists for you. And so you can therefore act and create that through free will if you choose to. And if you consistently deny something that keeps coming to you, it keeps coming to you, it keeps coming to you, I think that sets us up for depression.
Right. So there's some really good deep stuff here on the emotional side. In that intrinsic motivation for people as a coach or as a person, how do you bring people back to that emotional trigger that's going to activate the action? What do you do that when life gets in the way or distractions get in the way? Because we live in a very distracted world these days. How do you cultivate that for people?
Well, I teach people what I had to learn and what I have to practice all the time. Being somebody who has speech impediment, talking very fast, a lot of energy, we have to breathe. And you start understanding your breathing patterns. And it's not more. I don't add more to people's lives and their plans. I take away. It's a process of extraction. You clear away the unnecessary crap. You get the dust out. You get all the burnt fringes away, and you get them into a space that they're safe to breathe. And then you don't really have to do so much work to take them there. You hold space for that to happen, and things start to come about. And it's different for everybody. Sometimes it's like first session, somebody might break into tears, or it might come later. It might come, people hold memories in their tissues in different areas. I know for myself, in practicing Ashtanga, there have been times that I've had huge emotional releases. I have released areas of my body, and I was able to understand the memory and the moment that was connected to, and why that tension was held there. And so as we start to work with the framework of the body, things become very apparent, and your why comes about, not always right in the beginning, but through the breath and through your practice, the diligence of your practice, it does take form. It does come about.
Have you noticed differences between maybe how men or how women would approach this topic or intrinsic motivation? What have you noticed in coach? Because I know you coach both. Is there differences in how they get there generally?
Yeah, I work with a lot of male executives, and very similar. And then I work with a lot of women who are in a very similar lifestyle group too. They're all they're such amazing people. They really inspire me. I'm like, I don't know how you guys do what you do, like all the children and the work and running the household. It's incredible. But for their why, I can't say like every client gets the same results as everyone else, but my clients who get the best results, they're the ones who do have a very deep why, and sometimes, like myself included, a deep wound.
That's for men and for women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that
so not so different.
Women are more verbal about they're more talkative about it. Men are not always, but I can. I'm very intuitive, very sensitive to energy, and empathetic, and I can feel. I can know. I can have a good inclination, and I can bring things up and talk about things and guide in a way that helps foster the the why. But some people, to be honest, it takes much longer for them, and that might just be, or what happens is what they originally wanted was what they felt they had to do with society, and then what we end up doing is actually a little bit different. And that's a lesson that we were both to learn for each other. And so it's not always like everybody's going to walk away with washboard abs. It might be like, wow, but you know what? We healed your back. That's amazing. You don't have to get like, surgery now, or you have this awareness, or you found a new joy. You found that you really love hiking or surfing, or something else came from this. So, it's really a path for both of us. It's like a journey for each of us as we embark on the emotional. And what I find is oftentimes they're mirrors, they bring up different aspects of myself. And that's the beautiful thing about a coaching relationship, is that it's very symbiotic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I remember back in the day when I was dealing with a lot of one-on-one clients, they used to come to me, and I would say the similar situation, and I would say to them, okay, well, we'll get the fitness side worked out. That's no problem. You do the diet, you do the training, you do that. I said, we can do that. I said, but what really we're going to discover here is, what do you think you're going to get from achieving that? And what hole is that filling in your life? Or what do you what does that mean? And you discover that at some point along that journey, and oftentimes it was not what people expected or even understood. And I think that's one of the great values of developing a physical practice or developing a standard or a goal to achieve, or for whatever it is in that area, because it does become a self-discovery of your emotions and your mentality, and testing yourself at those levels, you find out what you're made of inside, even though it may be what appears to be an external practice. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, oftentimes people want it for the external result, but they have no idea what's going on inside, or just that they're able to access a whole new level of that through a movement practice and a discipline practice. Like if they're like, wow, I didn't know that whenever I'm stressed out, I eat, or I want sugary things, or you become attuned to your habits and your whatever tendencies you have. And you become much more self-aware. When you become aware of your body, you become aware of everything else that you do in your life. It's a great saying I like, which is, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're procrastinating between your sets, if you're not showing up every day, it's like, where else are you not showing up? Where else are you procrastinating? Where are you trying to, I always joke with people about picking up 5-pound weights. I'm like, you lift heavier things at Costco than that,
Right.
If you're not pushing that bar. But with that being said, there's a very fine line that I think is important to recognize, that not every day are you going to feel superhuman. And not every day is a day to push 110%. Your intensity in anything in life should really be like a wave. We have to plan for these recovery periods, and we have to adhere to the emotions and not think oh, I feel this way, I don't feel like training, there's something wrong with me. Let me reach for caffeine, let me take a pre-workout, let me do this, let me get a massage, let me do something to make myself feel better. We can't always fix it. Sometimes the only thing that you can do is not move, is to be in stillness. And there's this sensitivity that develops over time with a prolonged movement practice, that you begin to understand how to walk that tightrope. When to push, and when to back away, how to form boundaries. And that is, I think, the most beautiful part of a movement practice, is the most mature level is when you know when to go for it and when to back away. It's
I think that's you touched on another great thing. And to me, mastery of a sport almost comes after it's done. So as a high performing athlete or a high performance, you're kind of always in that red line zone all the time and pushing it. But it's kind of like when you kind of transcend that, when you're not going for maybe the gold medal or the trophy or the podium or that next time or whatever that is, you do get, as we get older, you start to develop this kind of mastery of when to push and when not to push. And that leads us to our final piece I want to touch on, the emergence of your meditation practice. That's kind of come out of that, because I know you're really diving even deeper into that as of lately. How did that all come out, and why is that important to you today, also in your own life and as a coach for other people?
So my movement practice, I didn't know that was a meditation for me. When I was younger, I was just doing it. I was just going. But I realized that my happiest times were when I was in that flow state, when I was just moving and in the moment. But then I would get done my workouts or get done my practice, and I would feel this void within me. And then I would search for more ways to move. And what I ended up doing was injuring myself, burning myself out, having health issues, because I was so attached to movement as a form of happiness. And so what happened was I got to a point where I had injuries. I just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing to fill this void of what I thought was my happiness. And I was like, well, if I can't do this anymore, I'm going to put all this energy into my career. So I became this whole fitness expert in LA and put my identity, that was my identity. Went from being this athlete to being this like career person. And then the things just kind of were like going, escalate, but then they just kind of like got roadblocked there. I hit like all these like speed bumps and I was getting injured and I couldn't work out as hard anymore. Thyroid issues. Then I put it into the career and I wasn't happy doing that. I got offered a travel TV show, signed a deal for that, lost a lot of money in that deal, didn't happen. And I got to the point that I was in my little tiny studio apartment, with a Murphy bed and sitting up against it and being like, well, what now? Like, what's my identity now? And who am I? And all these like uncomfortable things started coming up to the surface. And I was like, a friend gave me this book. There's a Spiritual Solution for Every Problem by Dr. Wayne Dyer. I just love Wayne Dyer. And he talks about meditation. And I had just gone through yoga teacher training because I was like, I need to master this way to move too,
Right.
Thinking there was something to master with yoga was interesting at that time. It just shows where my ego was at that time. I was like 26, 27. And I was like, well, maybe I'll actually try this meditation thing. I remember I was so angry. And I was angry at God. I was in this little tiny apartment and this little studio where I didn't have a table to put my Vitamix on, my blender. And so I would blend stuff on the floor. And I remember putting it on high and I yell at God and I go, God, if you are here, then you stop the blender. Like, do something about this whole mess in my life. Like everything, this is not how it was supposed to turn out. I was on this path to being this fitness expert, moving out here to California, and I got this TV show. Everything was so synced up the way I planned. And I'm like, do something about this if you're even here. Haven't we always been friends? And I was just crying. And I got up and I stopped the blender. And when I put my hand on the stop button, I go, oh. And I realized that, that I am the God I pray to. And that God lives within me. And he lives within all of us. And I'm sitting here asking, I would always say, oh God, if I could just be this weight, if I could just qualify for this competition, if I could just win this thing, if I could just score this many goals. I realized I was always asking God for things, kind of like that little book that I love, The Giving Tree, and God always gave to me what I needed. But there comes a time in your life that you need to start taking sincere, authentic action. And in that moment, I put on an audio tape, and it was for 20 minutes, and it was from something that Wayne Dyer had recommended. And I sat down and I said, I'm not going to move until this is over. And I've always put so much energy and discipline and devotion behind my physical practices, but what have I been doing for my spiritual practices? And I had realized not much. I had gotten so far off from that little girl who used to just like walk in the woods and play and take care of horses, expecting nothing, expecting like no outcome, just doing it because I enjoyed doing it. I had gotten on this path of competing and trying to become something that in becoming, you lose being. And that's very important. We can't lose being in our becoming. And so it was so hard to meditate, but it was so fulfilling. And, weight was just like released from my shoulders and tension started to melt away. And I started just being nicer to myself, to my body, to my mind. And then I tried a lot of different meditation techniques too, to explore multiple things. and things really started getting better. And things got so much better, but then they got worse because what I realized I was doing, you get this spiritual ego that happens a lot. Like, I'm like, oh, so it became my identity. I said, oh, now I'm a meditator. Now I'm spiritual. So I moved.
That's so great.
Beach, and I like start doing all these like really intense spiritual things because I was so used to like putting labels on myself that I was like, well, I guess I'll make this my new label. And what came to me in meditation is you keep on trying to label this as green juice when it's just like sugary Gatorade, like, or something, not necessarily bad on Gatorade.
Right.
But like you're trying to put this off as like something like really like organic and awesome and great when it's not, because it's not coming from that pure place. It's like there are some rotten apples in there, and you're just trying to fill all these new apples on top of it, and they're just rotting out the whole bunch. So what happened then is I started getting really depleted, and I had this really severe anxiety attack. And I would just wake up in the mornings and just cry. This depression hit me because I never let myself feel the pain of the loss of the TV show, of the competitions. So at some point, these things do come out. And it's so beautiful. It's so hard when they do. But at some point, we can't just be like, I'm going to think positively. I'm just going to say affirmations and mantras. I'm just going to do this and make it all better. You have to take time to feel the pain and to let the pain consciously go. So that's when I went on like my journey where I sold all of my stuff and I went out into nature and I found this like remembrance. That's when I really start to remember my inner nature, which is what I base my training program, Elemental Conditioning, on, is that like this inner nature within us. All we're doing in our training is restoring and getting back to that. We're not trying to become anything different or someone that we're not. We're just becoming more ourselves and seeing what that looks like. So nature really taught me how to be. And I reconnected with God in a loving, friendly way again. Yoga came into my life. Meditation came into my life. The present moment came into my life. And I have this little saying that it's like you have presence, you practice. Practice creates presence. Presence creates power, that inner power, and that inner power is going to create your prosperity. So, that's the process. And like that prosperity, that fruit, doesn't matter if it's millions of dollars, when it comes to like success or what we think it needs to be or like the perfect body, but that prosperity, those fruits, that it came from a really good root. It came from a really good seed that you planted. And so whatever that prosperity is, those fruits, that is so amazing for you, and to be really happy and content with that. That's what meditation has taught me, that I'm no longer trying to become the IFB pro, trying to become the Division I lacrosse star, the doctor, the this or that. It's like I'm being myself, and I'm just becoming more me. And whatever that is, I'm totally in love with.
It's a beautiful statement to get to that place, because I think everybody is really seeking that on some level. And your whole journey is an amazing journey, and it's a wonderful. And I really appreciate the depth of emotion that you share. That's not everybody is willing to go there. So I always love that about you, Kelly. How do people get in contact with you, get coached, find their inner spark? How do they dive deep inside themselves in this whole thing? Where are you? All that sort of stuff. And
Sure.
Want to share that with everybody?
Yeah, my website is kellygonzalez.com. And I have my customized coaching program where we can do that from anywhere in the world, online coaching. And we can go as deep as you're ready for, piece by piece. I also do corporate wellness and speaking and seminars. So I love traveling and talking about this stuff to lots of people, sharing it. So kellygonzalez.com, best way to get in touch with me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kelly. It was a wonderful journey that you shared and a very unusual one. And I think there's a lot of lessons, and I hope people, really embrace that process that you talked about. I think that was really profound. And I know that a lot of our listeners will really dive into that. And of course, for those of you who haven't had the opportunity, go reach out to Kelly. She's an amazing lady and an awesome coach and just a great person, and can really help you if you're really struggling with that intrinsic motivation to be successful. Kelly is definitely your girl. And I've been someone who has gone with online coaches for years and have been very, I've had the physical coaches and the online coaches, and beauty of online world today is it doesn't matter where you are. If Kelly's message resonated with you, jump in and start working with her, and I know that you won't be disappointed. So thanks so much for joining us today. It's at kellygonzalez.com. This is Way T. Lightheart from the Awesome Health Show, brought to you by BiOptimizers. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Wade.
At BiOptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the BiOptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.